Okay, so we still have time for our next session to start, which is at 4:10. So I guess can break out. Thank you. Okay, everyone. So we have our next session, which will be taken over by Chandrika Inturi and Tanvi Kelkar from Infosys. They will be talking about how to make instructor-led training documents multitask. So please welcome them. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. So, thanks, Mini. We are going to look at how our documents or documentation can multitask. So, the focus is more on how do we reuse, how do we optimize efforts, and so on. So, let's get started. So, I'll just quickly walk you through what we are going to do today. Basically, all our clients are putting a lot of effort in terms of money, in terms of resources to make sure that the new systems, the new processes that they roll out into their to their employees are fully adopted. And it's so expensive to do that. And despite the amount of effort and resources that are pumped into this activity, it's not always guaranteed that whatever new process is rolled out or whatever a new system is rolled out is going to be adopted and is going to stick for a long time. So this is a challenge which is one of the top 3 challenges that most of our clients face, and then they come to us saying that, hey guys, this is a problem and show us how to make it stick. How to make sure that people continue the process efficiently and give us the kind of performance we are expecting to get out of the process or get out of the application. Now, this is actually a very multifaceted problem. But as technical communication professionals, as designers, as instructional designers and learning professionals over here, we can definitely contribute and do our bit to solve the problem. So we are going to look at the problem statement, a holistic view of the problem statement. We are going to look at the drivers that will help us solve it from a learning professional perspective or from a technical communication professional perspective. And then we are actually going to dive down into the details as to the whys and hows your solution will help to resolve this issue. And we are going to look at a couple of case studies as to how we did it right at Infosys. So that's how we are going to take it. At the end of the session, we will have a couple of takeaways, and after that, we will have our question and answer session and also leave the floor open for discussion. Any queries? I would like you to keep your questions parked, and we can have a question hour session towards the end of the entire presentation. Okay, so what is end user adoption? Anybody can just try a hand at answering it. What do you mean by end user adoption? Training the end user, yes. Any other answer? Right? Anyone has a different thing to say?
How the documentation is used?
Yes, right?
Get into the shoes of user.
Yes.
Handholding.
Yes. So I think that's we've had very good responses, and actually you've touched on 2 main elements which contribute to end user adoption. One is training your users, and the second is to handhold them or to give them sufficient user assistance and performance support. So in any kind of an end user solution, your focus is on two things. One is training and the other is performance support. Now, if you actually look at how this happens in a company, or how as vendors we'd implement this for our clients, is that your learning professionals and your technical communication professionals seem to work in silos. That's how people are currently working. And that's not the idea it should happen when you go forward. Because if you're not working together, you're actually not working to meeting this challenge. So let's look at what the challenge actually is. See, in case of whenever there is an end user adoption project onto which you are actually working on, either as a technical writer or as a instructional designer or as a regular designer, very often the client will never come to you and say, you know what, I want to have my users adopt to at least 80% of the processes. This is never a requirement that will come across to you. They will say, a new system is rolled out, we want our users to know the system well and to use it well. But they will never give you a parameter which will point you holistically to the problem statement. So actually user adoption also includes change management, but today we are not going to touch on change because it's a vast subject by itself. We will focus more on the documentation part of it, right? So most companies say that give me 80% of my process to be adopted, give me that. I mean, they'll not say it as a requirement, but they will expect. Because when a system or a new application or a process is rolled out, usually after say 5 to 6 months, the kind of assessment they do is whether or not approximately 80% of that system or process has it been well adopted by the users. If it is, they say, okay, it went good, it's successful. But if it is not, then they will start moving the blame around to the application UI is not friendly, the UX is not good, the technical documentation is not that good, and so on. So keep in mind that whenever you have a user adoption scenario, make sure that you understand the problem statement holistically. It's not about how much documentation you need. It's not about what documentation you need. It's all about whether you're playing your role to help your client achieve a good user adoption. Now let's quickly look at what's good and what's bad user adoption. Good user adoption is typically an adoption that sticks for a very long time. So if you look at the process of how adoption takes place, when a new system is rolled out, typically everybody goes into training. People train, they have classroom training, they have e-learning and all sorts of training mechanisms put in place. After the training, they are supposed to go and start using the system. So the moment they are out of training, they are actually very highly motivated. Everybody is trying out new things, they are reading all the documentation and so on. So you will see that the processes are so well adopted. It's actually a mirage at that point. What happens in reality is something you should observe after that. Once the training is done and people go and start using the system, you will notice there is a slight drop in the way people are using the system. If there are hypothetically, if you say there are 100 processes or procedures, people will usually end up using only 50 to 60% of what they're supposed to do. In fact, they will retain their learning even lesser. Because also materials that are designed for training need not necessarily help them recall or retain. That's another problem which kind of contributes to the problem. So there is a dip in the way people use. And it's after the dip, which is called as the launch gate or the go live period, where you will see people using the system a little bit more better. And why does that happen? It happens because you have excellent technical documentation to refer to. It could be a web help, it could be a QRG, it could be a set of videos, it could be any other kind of intervention that you give them. And then people will tend to stick and use that system very efficiently. That's called good adoption. Now what happens in bad adoption is after the dip never climbs up. It just goes on, it's just a downfall of the curve. You never get the users to really adopt the system for the processes that are critical, for the scenarios that are essential for which the company has rolled out that process or application. Now in between good and bad adoption, the team that plays a very critical role is the technical communication professional team. They play a very, very critical role to make sure that the adoption sticks. Okay. So there are a couple of things. In our experience, we actually went and spoke to consumers. Consumers, I mean the end users of an application, the end users of a process or a system that is being rolled out. And then there's another set of consumers which are the trainers. But we are going to treat them as consumers for now, and we are later also going to treat them as regular trainers. So you'll see what we mean. So when we went and spoke to the end users, most of them said the documentation assets are not up to date. So when we went live, they had every document up to date, matching to the system and matching to the requirements. But after a couple of months, they come back saying it's not up to date. So something went wrong there. Something changed, and what was changed couldn't go back into the documentation. This is a very real life scenario problem. What they also said is documentation is not specific to roles and tasks. The reason is that system roles and organization roles do not map the same that they mapped at go live. Right? So your organization roles and the responsibilities attached with that roles are going to keep changing over time. Maybe the system roles continue to remain the same until you have the next upgrade on the system. But effectively in between, what happens is that people just lose the mapping. And then they come back complaining and saying that the documentation is not specific. What they also said is there is a gap between the training and the technical documentation. It's not the same. It doesn't refer to the same things. The product documentation doesn't map exactly to how the system is implemented in an organization. So what happened? What happened? They ended up adopting only 50 to 60% of the system. That means out of 100 processes, they are using only 50 to 60, which they feel they understand well and they are comfortable with. For the remaining 40, users will either use what already existed before, or best way is they'll just go to their manager and try to push the job into the other basket. That's how people do. Just because they're not enabled enough to take care of those processes. Now, if you try to understand the experience of an asset creator and a trainer, they have a different story to tell. They always will come back saying that, look, it's very hard to keep maintaining all the documentation. It's very tough to do that. Trainers will say we keep reinventing the wheel all the time. We have to create instructor guides every time we go for retraining. So every time there is a refresher training after 6 months, they have to create some fresh documentation. They really can't use the old PowerPoints they used 6 months ago because the system has changed. Because people have a lot of questions and there's a lot of social sharing that happens in an organization. There are new things posted on the wiki, there are frequently asked questions, there are discussion forums, there are bulletin boards. So a lot of information, a lot of content is kind of dispersed in different medias, and it's never gathered together to help an instructor use that information to retrain people. So it's all lost. So they have to reinvent the wheel. And the main thing is that an ILT or an instructor-led training has to be user focused, it has to be learner focused, it has to be process centric at the same time, right? So when all this information is lost irretrievably, everybody ends up reinventing the wheel. It's not just the trainers, it eventually also comes to the people who are going to maintain and update the technical documentation assets. They sit and reinvent the wheel. Now the crux of this problem is that many people are not understanding that training and performance support actually go hand in hand. They're not two separate things that operate in silos. They have to speak to each other. So our session today is focused on telling you how to get these two things to marry and how to optimize your efforts for your own team as well as for your client. Any questions? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Now, if you have to really solve this challenge, you have to understand what are the drivers to this challenge. If you are able to understand the drivers, it's a pretty easy job for you to collaborate with the, the other team. It could be the team of instructional designers or the team of training professionals, or for the training professionals, it could be interacting and collaborating with the TechCom professionals. So we'll look at the consumer dimension. Now in case of the consumer dimension, whenever the system is rolled out or a process is rolled out, the first thing that happens is training. And today even most of the companies which promote self-paced learning and electronic learning still tend to have a huge focus on classroom training. That is instructor-led training. Somehow they're very reassured that if you are doing ILT, my users are going to know the system in and out. That's required for their job and that's relevant to them. So any kind of an adoption always starts with training. And in training you have two kinds of people. You have a trainer and you have a users. And you have the assets. Now these could be training assets, or it could also be product documentation assets. It needn't just be, a PPT. So now they have these so many assets. You'll actually see we've drawn so many assets, right? It's pretty confusing for the trainer as well as for the users. Now, irrespective of the number of assets that exist or that need to be created, as a TechCom professional and as a training professional, it's important to keep in mind 5 drivers. The first one is how do they help retain? If you are creating a quick reference guide, how would it help in training? Also, how is it going to help people to retain what they learned once they are out of the classroom? I mean, I'm sure we don't want our learners to keep opening the manual all the time. Because if they have to keep referring the manual, over time they just decide to stop using the process. So, the answer has to be clarified in your own mind as to how is it going to retain information. Right? So when you design the documentation, keep in mind that retaining is one of the important objectives of any kind of documentation. The second driver is, does it aid recall? The idea here is, it's not just about, getting people trained and putting them out on their workplace and come on, get started. It's about making sure they don't come back for retraining. That's very important, because if they come back for retraining, the motivation and the push to adopt a system goes down very badly. So, make sure that the documentation aids recall in such a way that you read a document once, you shouldn't have to come back to it all the time and refer it in order to do the job. They should be able to remember at least 60 to 70% of the documents which they refer once or twice. So it gives them enough of mind share to look at what they don't remember. And that's how they will end up actually learning and retaining the knowledge that is included in the documentation. The third driver is, do they offer specific on-the-job support? So if you really look at how people adopt, they don't even spend more than 3 minutes looking at a performance support document. Really nobody has time. In fact, people try to complete the process in 10 minutes and go for a tea break. Right? So make sure that the document you create or the asset that you create is not taking more than 2.5 minutes to read. So it should be very precise, it should be very granular. You can actually make it granular if you want to. So just keep these few things in mind. Now if you look at the asset creator or the modifiers dimension or the trainer's dimension, as an asset modifier, as a TechCom professional or as a training professional, it's important to understand how the asset will be used. Does a QRG do a better job than a web help? Or does a video do a better job than a web help? So, sorry? Exactly, and that is why we will walk you through a couple of case studies, because there are a lot of things. It depends on your audience size, your audience spread, the existing knowledge of the audience, right? It also depends on whether your audience is on the go or they are sitting at their workplaces and working. And not the least, it depends on what kind of a budget your client has. So the intervention choice becomes very important. The content or the information may remain the same, but how you deliver it to your consumers, how do you deliver it to your end users becomes very critical. And that is where you need to understand how the asset will be used, when it will be used, and accordingly make a choice of what goes into a video, what goes into a web help, what goes into quick references, what goes into any kind of a screen instruction, and so on. And the fifth is to know why a system will be adopted. See, it's never an answer that, because your client XYZ is rolling out a process, the employees are going to adopt it. No way are they going to adopt it. That is not the reason why they will adopt it. They will adopt it only if they see the what's in it for me. Only if they are motivated to adopt it. And only if that system or process can handle the most frequent scenarios they come across. So as TechCom professionals, it means for us, we need to know the user stories very well. And not just know the user stories, but also know which ones are critical, which ones are frequent. And accordingly decide what do you want the frequent user stories to be presented at. They could be videos, or it could be web help, or just quick reference which you can print out and put it up on your softboard. So the why also becomes very essential. Now if you take care of these 5 drivers, you definitely will contribute to a successful end user adoption. Okay, now let's consolidate and look at how and why you can do this. Okay, now when you're actually doing this, Yes, right. So I'll just repeat his question. There is user feedback and enhancements that come in after the go live happens, and that has to be incorporated not just into the system, but also on the user documentation and assistance, user assistance documentation, other kind of technical documentation. Now in such a if this scenario comes up, you have to really judge the frequency at which it will happen. The more frequent you feel this is going to happen, it makes better sense to make your content chunking, content chunking areas very granular. In the sense, if you're using, say, something like a RoboHelp to create, to host all this content, you have to make it very granular. You can't just have a big long process documented together, but you have to really break it into smaller parts so that when an enhancement comes, you're actually working on a smaller part and not a larger part. Likewise, in a training document that you create, you have to go very granular. And the key to all this is to make sure that the tool you use here has the capability to do single source authoring.
When we talk about the frequency, are we talking about the UX analytics, user experience analytics?
No, if there are changes in the UX that happen, you will still need to update your documentation. So it could be additional user stories, or it could be UX changes. So both will need to reflect any which ways. So if you have a change in documentation that is required, the best way is to have granular documentation that is created in a single source authoring tool. If you do not do that, then you actually end up pumping a lot of effort into that.
And that holds good for documentation for specific which doesn't have a user interface.
Sorry, come again?
That scenario also holds good for documenting stuff which does not have a user interface.
Yes. Because see, UX changes is one thing that will need to reflect. There are user stories also which need to be added and enhanced. And the other scenario is when a system itself gets upgraded. See, a lot of times if you see, most companies will never settle for, one version. They will say, release me a 1.0, and 4 months down the line, release a 1.1, and after that do a 1.2. So they are never going to buy a system, just accept it as it is. They will run it. They will take it for a test drive, not just the initial test drive, but they will run it live over 3 to 4 months, and then they will say, give me an upgrade after that. So if you go granular, you're taking care of that as well. If you don't go granular, then you know what we do, right? We spend the whole nights trying to create and reinvent and write the whole thing again, right? Ideally, that's a very good question she has. So she says at one point we said that the user doesn't have to come to the, sorry, what happened? Okay. The user doesn't have to come back to the document again and again to refer. So she has a very good point, and she says that the system or the application has to be very intuitive. That's the ideal situation where the UX is designed in such a way and it's so intuitive that there is a minimal performance support that is required. But in scenarios where that's not the case, we need to make sure that our documentation is very intuitive, so that once read, it's retained and you really don't have to go back and open it again. So if you are opening 10 documents today as an end user, you should be opening only 2 documents after 15 days. That's the whole idea. Okay, so now we'll actually move forward. The idea is that because a user adoption starts with training, we are going to focus on how to make instructor-led trainings also support performance in terms of performance support documents, as well as how to make the training documents reusable for performance support. So that's going to be our focus.
Hi, we're actually two presenters, so I'm doing the second act. I'd like to tell you a story. About 2 years ago, we have a banking software called Finacle in Infosys. I think some of you might know. So we had sold it to an Australian bank which had 7 branches in separate pan-Asian countries, including Hong Kong, China and all that. So what we did, what they said is we had to adapt the software, Finacle, for all these 7 countries separately, because there are different banking laws for all these countries. So what we did was we developed a version of Finacle. Okay. So we developed a version of Finacle for them and then adapted it to the different countries. So there were 7 versions of Finacle. And we had, along with the product, given them a standard user manual and documentation package. And then we, along in the contract was that we would train the new employees into the version of Finacle that we had given them. So, and we have a department of trainers within our company, and along with the trainers, because the trainers are very specialized, they are banking officials and the Finacle experts and all that, and what they are not is they are not good writers. Okay, so a team of technical communicators and instructional designers started creating the ILT material for them. So they would go and conduct the training in whichever country, and so what we did was we created all these documents, and what happened was this Australian bank had also already employed a team of technical communicators to create technical documents once the training was done. Okay, because what they had received was a standard version of user manual, so they thought that once the training is done, they will start creating their own technical documents which they will use henceforth. What happened was that this training material that we created, which included user manuals, which included the presentations, PPT, and such comprehensive and detailed author notes, which we made into form of a book and gave it as user manuals. And we also, during the training, created what is called as screen instructions, where each process, step by step, you put out each process along with the screen instructions and screenshots, and gave it as screen instructions. Now once we had finished the training, it so happened that this documentation was so comprehensive that unfortunately they fired the technical documentation group that they had hired to create the documentation later. And this ILT material henceforth was used as technical documentation. It is 2 years now, and they are still very happy with it. What happened for the maintenance also was that we had trained a few people as future trainers. Once we give the training and come back, then for the new employees that come, we had trained a few, 5 or 6 of them in each branch, and these people became owners of the documents that we had given, and whatever updates had to be done, they were doing it. So this was a success story, which I think was a huge saving for the client, and this has also been duplicated in 2 other cases, and every time it has led to a lot of customer delight in the Infosys clients. So this was one of the reasons why it gains a little more on whatever documentation that you give along with the product, because assets and performance documentations are not in isolation, and they will have to support each other. What happens was that what we realized that when a system is being taught and it is being used for the first time, there is so much of real-time experience and problems that come up which are addressed by the trainers in a way that can never be addressed later, or it cannot be imagined. As technical documenters or communicators, we know that we imagine or we think test cases will throw up problems that we imagine and we get the solution for and document it. But in a real-time environment, when people, very new people, novices to the system are actually using the process, though at the problems that come up at that time and the solutions that are arrived at that time, these need to be documented as it will never happen again. So this is what we collected, and this was what was like priceless, we could say, in the documentations that we created. And the second part was that the documentations that were created were a collaborative effort. There were many times when the entire system was tweaked. For example, there is a system of maker-checker kind of thing in a bank. So one person's, creates something, maybe a loan application. It is mandatory that someone else approve it. So there is a maker and there is a checker. So these kind of things that are of different systems in each bank. And the system itself was tweaked many times so that this was documented properly. Now this kind of experiences that we documented in these things, there was a very specific user role and task oriented kind of groupings that we made, and that was carried forward when we started doing the content management. So whatever documents were created were actually put in specific user roles. This user role will take these 10 tasks and this will be the extent of the tasks that they will perform. So these will be in this lot. And this kind of documentation management was very intuitive and very helpful to the end users. This kind of thing that we can do is something that would be invaluable. And the troubleshooting tips and solutions that came up from the ILT training was something that the instructors had given us. And there was also this sense of familiarity that the end users had towards the documents. Okay. So there was a familiarity because they had seen these documents during the training, and they had maybe also contributed to it in the form of tooltips or whatever, in the form of questions. So this kind of familiarity led to a high retain and recall elements later on. So the 5 drivers that Tanvi was speaking of, all of them were used to the maximum extent when this was. And the whole transition business of using new software was very smooth and easy. So as you can see, users need to retain what is taught, and if they are role and task centric, nothing can be better. You don't have to do an elaborate search to find what you are in. The roles that are given by the HR is what we took from the bank, and then we put it as our tasks groups. So this kind of document management system was very specific, was customized to the highest degree for that company, and it was done during in the matter of course when the training was happening, with no extra time given at all. So as far as possible, as an asset creator, we try to use a single source documentation. In this case, we used Simple Word. We had used e-learning as a part of overview, and the rest we used documentation, which was Word documents and PDFs. Yeah, there were other two cases which Tanvi will quickly take you through.
Okay, folks, in the interest of time, we'll quickly look at the case studies. Okay, so this is an example. This is a case study where we were actually providing an end user adoption solution for a manufacturing company. It's a very worldwide, well-known company that manufactures bikes, and they were implementing an ERP system, a very good global ERP system. And they wanted to do it in two waves. Wave one comprised of having the key users trained and adopted onto the system, and they were about 100 business process leads. Following that, wave two was to have 10,000 users across geographies to adopt to the system. Now we had a good amount of benefit in terms of good adoption, good end user engagement, and as well as reduced spend in terms of creating assets. Now the kind of consumer experience that they expected was to have everything up to date all the time, good engagement experience and feedback being implemented into the documentation. So the actual experience looked like this. We had a wave one where key users would be trained through a TTT or train the trainer, and they would in turn take a test drive of the system, give us feedback, have the system upgraded, have the documentation upgraded, and then they in turn would go and conduct classroom for the remaining 10,000. So this is what you see as the client facing thing or the consumer facing thing. Now behind the curtains there was a lot to do for the TechCom professionals. It wasn't that easy. They had to identify first the key assets of information. So we actually went and identified what are the existing assets. There was standard product documentation for the ERP system that was being rolled out. Keeping single sourcing in mind, the next thing we did is we identified the key assets required for training and performance. And we went ahead and created those assets using a single source authoring tool. So we chose On Demand in this case, which is a single source authoring tool, and it helps you import and export a variety of formats. So we actually leveraged on that and we created Train the Trainer material, which was a PPT format in this case. Now to make sure that we have a good amount of reuse of what we have single source authored, we published different kinds of asset from the on-demand tool. So we published an instructor guide which had everything, which explained the concepts, the process, the procedures, and it also had instructor notes for the instructor to conduct further classes, because the business process leads, as you know, they are not facilitators, they are not TechCom professionals. So they are not very familiar with communication skills that are required on a training. So we gave them good instructor notes. And then it doesn't stop at instructor notes, right? You also have to give some participant guides. So the participant guides evolved out of the instructor guide. The next thing that this client needed was using the training assets to support performance. So we in fact used the simulations or the videos that we created to support performance. Support performance assets, that were created through reuse and repurpose directly from On Demand included job aids and a user help that was role centric and process centric. So this is how we implemented, and we had a very good benefit. Because we used a single source authoring tool, any kind of upgrades were very easy to get into the tool and republish again at a very minimal effort. In fact, we ended up teaching the client how to use On Demand as well. So they didn't have to really come back to us to make minor changes. They were very happy about it. Now there was another case study, which I just wanted to share with you. Now the difference here is that we had very few key users and 25,000 users. So there wasn't a possibility of doing a TTT. So I'll just quickly bring the slide on. Now here the key users were supposed to undergo the process training for all the processes, and the other users, the 25,000 users, they just had to learn their own bit. So this is how we had planned out for them. The key users would test drive, and they would train users on the subsequent upgrades if required at a later point. Now here, the key was to identify what is the granularity level that you want to take your documentation to. Once that is identified, we created assets at that granularity level using a single source authoring tool. In this case, we actually chose Adobe Captivate because they expected a lot of videos, they expected a lot of PPT material and so on. And we also created a web help. So web help was actually not really reused, but we reused a lot of content we'd put in Adobe Captivate. We created interactive simulations. We also created the normal demo kind of simulations, which are like self-running videos. And we also created instructor slides out of the Captivate file. For performance support, we republished the content in the authoring tool into job aids. So this is how we've done a slightly different implementation depending on the difference in the requirements that came across. So case study 3 actually we will not go through because Chandrika has already taken us through it. So as a quick takeaway, one thing to keep in mind is that remember that performance support and training really do not work separately. It's important to keep that in mind. It's important to collaborate with the team that is looking after training and vice versa. Remember that ILT is always the first thing that's rolled out to the user, so you will definitely find a lot of reusability in those documents. If you don't find, you need to proactively collaborate beforehand. ILT assets, if you reuse, if they're designed well, they will definitely reduce the duplication process and the effort associated with it. And as we all are familiar with, make sure that your ILT documents are user-centric, they're process-centric, and they provide good maintainability as well as sustainability. Okay, we'll quickly have a Q&A session if there are any questions in the interest of time. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much, Tanvi and Chandrika. And since you were presenting, I would like to present you with the certificate and momentum, please. Thank you very much. Chandrika.
She's Chandrika.
Okay. Tanvi, thank you very much.